negotiate all that. But then again, at the same time, it's exciting to negotiate and come out the other side and say, yeah,
we did.
I battled the elements, we got through it, and we're back down on the ground safe. You walk away quite proud, actually, to say, yeah, we did a good job, guys.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I mean, I've done landings where the airplane is shaking quite violently.
I was about to say, what were your scariest landings if ever?
Yeah. I once landed in Hong Kong, the old airport, which was called Kai Tak Airport. And it wasn't the classic one where you land through, you come around and you had to do a visual maneuver to land onto the runway. It was actually the opposite runway, which was more of a straight in to land. And this particular one, you came through a gap of two hills. It's called the Lei Yu Mun Gap. And we came through that gap. As we came in through that gap, we hit really, really bad turbulence. It was so bad, we could hardly read the instruments.
Wow.
The airplane was shaking that bad. It was only like 45 seconds. But 45 seconds coming in close to the ground is, we had the stick shaker twice as the airplane, and we were almost about to go around, and then it just became smooth again. We carried on and landed.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Moments with Nyengeterai. Thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you so much for sending the messages. I'm loving the messages, and we're doing the best that we can to bring the guests that you want. But before we move on with the show, I just want to ask one little thing. Could you go and hit the subscribe button? Because we're realizing that a lot of people, almost like 60% of you who are watching, are not actually subscribing. So if you can just subscribe and be a part of this community, thank you so much. So now we get into the show. I'm so excited about today. We've talked about this for months from last year, and I have an amazing guest today. So I don't know what we're going to do with time. But anyway, Captain, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you.
It's just amazing to have you here, to finally have you sit across me. So to the few who don't know you, please introduce yourself, who you are, what's your call to fame?
My call to fame, my first call to fame is, of course, that I'm a husband, I'm a father, I have children, and I've got a very stable and happy family. So that's my first call of fame.
Wow.
And then my second call of fame is obviously my career. I've been a pilot for over 40 years. I've flown all over the world. I'm an instructor. I train other pilots. I train other senior pilots. And I've worked in Zimbabwe. And thereafter, I left Zimbabwe and went to the Far East. And I've been working in the Far East for almost 33 years or so, flying for a major airline over there.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Let's go back to your childhood.
Yes.
I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, what made you decide when you go back to your childhood? What is it that made you decide that, you know what, when I grow up, I'm going to be a pilot? Because I remember when I was young, I used to say I wanted to become an air hostess.
And what happened?
I don't know. When I then grew up, I can't remember what happened. But I always used to say I was going to be an air hostess, but I never did. But what made you want to become a pilot, and how did that come about?
It's strange because certain things just grab you when you're a youngster. And I grew up in my early years. I was only in Zimbabwe for maybe 4.5, 5 years. Then my parents moved from Zimbabwe and went to Zambia. Yeah. So my education was actually all in Zambia. But the school I went to in Zambia was a boarding school. And it was in Lusaka, and it was opposite the international airport in Lusaka. And at break time, you could see airplanes taking off and landing in the distance. In our playground, I could see them. And but essentially, from the first time I got in an airplane with my mom when she took me to boarding school in Lusaka, I said, yeah, I like this. And then watching airplanes every day, my friend would be running around, but every time I heard an airplane taking off, I'd stop and watch it take off and climb away. I just said, that's what I want to do. And I was probably 6, 7 years old.
I was about to ask, that's the next thing I was going to ask. How old were you?
I was 6 or 7 years old.
And then from then on, you went, okay, so that's primary school, then you went to high school, and you just continued with this vision to become a pilot.
Yes, I just continued with the vision. And, at boarding school, you get exit weekends, for example.
Mm-hmm.
From primary school, I went to a high school in Lusaka called Kabulonga Boys School. And on weekends, all my friends would get the exit chit to go and watch the flicks, as we called it then.
Is that movies?
Movies. They said, you're going to the flicks. Mm. Yeah, because so they'd go and watch movies. I'd get a note from the housemaster with a school stamp on it to say, this is a bona fide student of Kabulonga School for Boys. He's visiting the airport and would like to visit the airport. If you would give him a tour, it would be much appreciated. So every weekend I would go to the airport with a note and go and watch aeroplanes, essentially. And sometimes the security person would take me onto the airside, would go on the airplanes that were parked at the airport. I would speak to some of the engineers, and the security guy would be with me, and I was in high school. I would go in the airplanes. If there was someone in the cockpit, would go in there. I remember going into Alitalia airplanes, BOAC, which became British Airways, and so on. And that's what I did on my weekends.
Wow. Jeez. How do you have a young person who's so focused? Young kids are not even that focused. And then you went on. So where did you train?
So, and then I went on, when I finished high school in Zambia, I had a place at university, actually. And my intention was, if I don't get to fly airplanes, my other interest was either engineering or medicine. I said, I'd rather do engineering or medicine. So I'd applied to go to engineering school, or I'd go to medical school, because the first year, the way they had it in Zambia, first year of university is your equivalent to A-levels.
Okay.
So you have to pass the first year.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the first year, you can then select what stream you want to go in.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'll do the first year. After the first year, I'll either do medicine or engineering. That's what I was going to do. And halfway through the first year, a school advertised that they wanted 10 cadet pilots to go and train as pilots, because I kept my ear to the ground, checking everything. And it was a government school. It's still there. It's called ZASTI, Zambia Air Service Training Institute in Lusaka. And I applied. And there were 3,000 candidates.
And they wanted 10?
They only wanted 10. Yeah.
And you made it in the 10?
I made it. I became one of the 10.
Wow.
So I went to Zambia Air Services Training Institute. And over there, I got what they call a private pilot's license, which is the first stage. Mm-hmm. You first year student, then you can become a private pilot's license, where you do some theory subjects, you do some flying as well. And by the time you finish the theory and flying, you've done about 40 or 50 hours of flying. Mm-hmm. Then after
and you're
that,
flying what, the small planes?
The small planes, a 4-seater or a 2-seater, just you and the instructor.
And no one else, no passengers?
No passengers, nothing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the pilots go through that stage. Everyone who's ever trained to be a pilot has flown the 2-seater. And then after between 7 to 12 hours, you have to go solo, where the instructor teaches you, and one of the circuits where you just go around, take off, land, take off again, land, they're called circuits. When you reach a level of proficiency and the instructor is happy, he comes out of the airplane and he says, right, off you go, on your own, do one circuit. That's called your first solo. Mm. And every pilot remembers their first solo.
When was your first solo?
It was in Lusaka. Mm-hmm. I remember it was showing my age now. It was in 1978. Mm-hmm. I did my first solo in a Cessna 150. That's the model of aeroplane. Mm-hmm. At Lusaka City Airport. I just went around the circuit and landed. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, I was just thinking as you were talking that back then, were there any black pilots at all? Because I'm thinking how, when you were there, were there even any black pilots? When you were training?
Yeah, the thing is, you see, when you look at those days, obviously the political situation in the region was very difficult, certainly for Rhodesians as they saw us then, of course. And Zambia, Mozambique, Tanzania took a lot of Zimbabweans, and we all lived there, and they accepted us, and we went to schools there. And Zambia, having had its independence in 1964, was ahead of the game compared to us here. So there were some black pilots, but even then, not many in Zambia Airways, very few. And those guys are trained in the UK. So Zambia Airways basically was trying to indigenize and have more black pilots. That's how this training course started.
Oh,
That's what happened.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah. So after I got my private pilot's license, Zambia Airways, the national airline, came and essentially poached us from the college
Wow.
and sent us to the UK. There was how many? 12 of us. We all went to the UK. And we went to a British Airways flight training school called the College of Air Training at Hamble, Southampton. I remember it because it was a nice, cold, freezing day when I arrived in the UK in 1979.
I can imagine from this heat, from this nice weather.
It was freezing, February 1979, and it was cold. But they knew that probably we didn't have enough cold weather. When they met us at the airport, they had warm jackets for all of us. Yeah. And from immigration, essentially, they gave us the jackets. They said, "Are you guys going to?" So we said, "Yes." They had the jackets ready. They said, "Oh, we got some jackets for you guys." Blah blah blah. I mean, we had jumpers, and my mom had knitted me a jumper, a jersey sort of thing, but not for that sort of winter. Yeah. So yeah, I remember some of those things, and then basically they drove us to the college, and that's where I did my commercial pilot's license and instrument rating, graduating in 1981.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after graduating, did you stay there? Did you stay with British Airways, or what happened?
No, we had a bond. We had to work for Zambia Airways for 4 years.
Okay.
That was part of the sponsorship,
Oh, okay.
which we didn't mind because it guaranteed you a job. It means you're guaranteed to work for
For an airline.
an airline. Yeah.
So you came back, you went to Zambia and you worked for 4 years.
Yes.
And then you mentioned that you worked for AirZim. So how did you leave Air Zambia and end up?
So from Zambia Airways had a management contract with Ethiopian Airlines. And Ethiopian Airlines were expanding. And you can see where they are now. They're expanding, and they bought new aircraft at Boeing, and a lot of their pilots went to the States to train. So they needed some pilots to fly their domestic airplanes in Ethiopia.
Wow.
And they asked Zambia Airways if they had any pilots. And I and a few friends of ours were essentially flying at the time as systems pilots on the 707, which is basically operating flight engineers panel, not actually flying. And we wanted to fly. So when they said, "Would you like to go to Ethiopia and become co-pilots on DC-3?" we all said yes. So off we went. So I was in Ethiopia for 2 years, 1980, end of 81, 82, 83. And then 84, I came to Zimbabwe. I came back to Zimbabwe, essentially. And I joined Air Zimbabwe. And then I was in...
What made you come back to Zimbabwe?
I was just waiting to get the sufficient hours. I kept coming here and speaking to them. They said, "Oh, you need to get 1,000 hours. You need to get 1,000 hours experience."
Really?
So immediately I got the 1,000 hours experience in 84. I came.
You came back to Zim?
Yes.
Oh, how was the experience then?
It was good. Yeah, in Air Zim, then there were only two. Actually, when I came, 2 other pilots. There was Alex and there was Costa and myself when I joined.
Wow. Tell me, when we talk about being a pilot, what is the most exciting part of being a pilot? And what do you believe are some of the hardest things of being a pilot? Hardest parts of being a pilot?
I think a lot of people look at flying and they think, "Oh, it's great because you can travel all around the world and it's going to be great. And, you can stay in nice, fancy hotels. Pilots are respected everywhere. You guys really have a good time and so on." But it's actually quite a taxing job once you're in it. There's a lot of sacrifices, not just for you. There's sacrifices for your family. Once you get into the airlines, there's a lot of sacrifices there. For example, when I worked for Air Zimbabwe, it wasn't too bad. But when I went to the Far East and joined Air Hong Kong and then Cathay Pacific, newly married, young wife, no children, and you go off for a week, strange country for me, strange country for her, doesn't know anyone, so there's all these sacrifices that people don't see on the other side. So you're going away, you're leaving your family behind for a week or more sometimes, and you're coming back, and you eventually, when I had children, your child is looking at you when you walk in the house like a stranger. The child is looking, who's this? And takes a day or two before she realizes, or he realizes, oh, this is dad. But then you're there for 5 days and you're off again. But it's a big sacrifice. And the other thing that people don't recognize is there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes, because the job is only really as good as 6 months until you retire. Because every 6 months you're doing a flight check, a test in the simulator, in the aircraft. Every year you do an annual. You fail that, you have to go back into the classroom, repeat the lessons. If you fail it again, they give you one more chance. You fail it, you're out. You've lost your job.
Wow.
They've really got to be up there all the time.
Wow.
It's not like other professions where you graduate at university. That's it. Nobody's ever going to come and ask you, hey, can you tell me about the theory of doing this?
Yeah.
If you have this sort of client, what do you do with this? No one will ask you once you've got that certificate.
That's it.
In aviation, you keep getting asked these questions.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. You're tested periodically, random tests, sometimes almost every other day for drugs, alcohol. You test positive for alcohol when you report for duty, or drugs, you're out. That's it. You lose your license. And aviation is small. It's very difficult then to move somewhere else and get another job because the record is now there. Why did you leave such and such a company? And immediately find out it's because of a drug issue or alcohol issue. That's it. So there's a lot of things that are behind.
Do they force you to go and exercise? I've never seen a fat pilot.
Oh, there's some.
Really?
Yeah, but
actually, I've never. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
No,
they don't force you to exercise, but it's in your interest to stay fit, because if you fail your medical, then there's a problem. If you get too fat and you get insulin resistant, you end up with diabetes and all those things, and then there's a problem, because diabetic pilots can have a problem in flight because of
color.
Yeah, they can easily black out if the sugar level is whatever, so those things, they do affect how you perform. So it's in your interest to either just keep a regime of exercise, maybe not even gym, just walking. Walking is simple. Swimming, that sort of thing. But look after yourself, essentially, because that is your life until you retire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they teach you guys how to speak? Because it's like, pilots have this really nice voices, so I'm always wondering, do they teach you guys how to speak? What is it?
Actually, it's moved away from that quite a lot.
Really?
Yeah. You know how they say, kudara taita, this, and in the old days, they used to teach, when you started becoming a senior pilot and you became a captain, you actually went into the classroom and they taught you the etiquettes of sitting on a table and eating properly, the etiquettes of introducing yourself, the etiquette of speaking correctly in the microphone, and how to introduce yourself and the rest of the crew and things like that. Most of that elaborate training has actually disappeared in a lot of airlines. They don't do that anymore. But what we do is we learn to speak from videos and history and the way to say things and how to speak and so on. So there's no specific classes for it, but yeah.
Oh, wow. So tell me, when you're flying and the flight is turbulence, what will be happening? You know how what will be happening, and how do you guys manage to always be in control? Like, your voices never ever sound panicky.
No, because even if you are panicky, you can't show that to the passengers you're carrying, because that will get them worried. There's a famous line by the British, ex-British Airways pilot who's late now, but he's a captain who was flying a British Airways airplane that lost all 4 engines because of volcanic ash. So all 4 engines switched off.
Wow.
But what he said on the PA didn't get the passengers panicking at all. What he said was, we've got a little bit of trouble or something like that with the engines. We've lost all 4 engines and we're doing our darndest to get them going again. I hope you're not in too much distress. I'll speak to you later. That's it. Something like that. Or words to that effect. But the passengers recounted later that, it didn't seem like there was too much of a problem from the way he said it. It seemed as if it's a normal thing.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But inside him, he was in a state of panic. But he has to show, you have to show control. Certainly as a commander, you have to show control. Otherwise, you want to be able to delegate what needs to be required or think straight. So turbulence. Everybody talks about turbulence. Can I cheat my bamboos? No, Ofamba said.
It actually goes like this.
Yeah,
like, what will be happening?
Mapapa chinenge simukira so my engine chidai nange chichimbo Ofamba say. Can the aeroplanes withstand all that now?
I don't even understand. How do they do that?
Mabamba enomboya say imumuru mumuya.
Actually, I know we are saying my bum is still way.
Yeah, it shouldn't be my bum, is it? Yeah, but if the only analogy I can give is a boat on a river. And if you take the water in the river as air, and you take the boat as the aeroplane. And then if you take the rocks and stones underneath where the water is going over, and it's going over the rocks and doing that, if you take those rocks and call them mountains and hills on normal ground, so the air is the water that's going in the river. The boat, when it goes over those stones with the river, the boat goes up, right? And comes down on the other side, just like the rapids. If you've ever gone whitewater rafting, it's going over the rapids, it's doing this so in the air is flowing and there's wind. And it's going over the land surfaces, and it's going over mountains. And the air is being pushed up the mountain at low level and going down on the other side. But it's going through the whole level right up to 40,000 feet. So the airplane is flying through that air. So as it flies through, it also gets pushed up and gets down, just like a boat on the river going over. That's the same thing.
Really?
Yes, same thing. Exactly the same analogy. That's exactly what's happening.
So why do you make us put back our seatbelts? It's just
because the aeroplane is going up and it's going down. Have you ever sat in a bus and gone on a bumpy road, especially if you're sitting right at the back? You almost hit the ceiling, right? As the bus and the car is doing this.
Okay. Makes a lot of
So it's better to keep yourself strapped in. Then if the aeroplane goes up, you don't go up and hit the ceiling. But what we do, of course, is we use a lot of weather is associated with turbulence. So if there's thunderstorms, there's large cumulus clouds, as we call them, or cumulonimbus clouds. In that cloud, the air is going up, and it's also going down in part of the cloud, then it's going up again. So anytime anything goes through it, gets pushed up, goes down, pushed up, gets down. So what we try and do is obviously go around any weather.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes there can be a line of thunderstorms between that's cutting across Africa. So if you're going to London and you're coming from Harare and it's cutting across Africa from the east coast of Africa right up to Angola, right, it's thunderstorm. You have to pick your way through the narrowest bit where there's some gap. But in that gap, there will be a little bit of bumps. So we tell you to fasten your seatbelts. So we use the weather radar to judge where's the best entry point that we can use to go through. It's a bit like when you're negotiating yourself and it's in a crowded place and you're walking, right? You can see how to walk and you go in between two people, then you see another space and you do that. Exactly like that. If you see the people as clouds and thunderstorms, that's what the aeroplane will be doing. Yeah. And sometimes you end up clipping a cloud. It's a bit bumpy, so we keep you sitting down.
Oh, wow.
It's good for you.
I guess now you guys really have to study geography because, one of the subjects when I left school that I just said this was the most useless subject ever, it was geo. I kept saying, why do I need, my phone can tell me whether I want to go west or whatever. I don't need geo. But now, okay, it makes sense. So you guys really have to understand the clouds.
Mostly, what you need to know is obviously English is the international language for aviation and mathematics, but not not very complicated mathematics, but you need some maths to understand some of the concepts of why the aeroplane is doing what it's doing and why you've got to do certain things. You can't get by without any mathematics or a degree of maths. You also need general physics because, it's flying through the air is airflow. It's air is like a fluid. You must understand what the air is doing, understanding what the principles of flight is, why you're doing certain things, why you lower the flaps, what's actually happening. You have to understand that. So it's physics, maths, and obviously English.
Okay. So you've been flying for how many years now?
44 years nearly.
Wow. And what I know you've gotten some accolades. Take me there. What did you get your accolades for and why? And I also need to understand, I know you're not a pilot, you're a captain. What is the difference between a pilot and a captain? And what are the responsibilities of a captain when we're flying?
Well, when they say the pilot of this aeroplane attempted to land and so on, they're talking about the captain. And then the assistant is called the co-pilot. So you're all pilots. And the co-pilot can do exactly what the commander can do, what the captain could do. The only difference between the two is that the captain has more experience and probably has seen more things in aviation and can make more informed decisions based on the experience that he or she has got. Okay? So it's not so much, it's like a new driver. The new driver can do a lot of things that experienced drivers can do. But experienced drivers probably know exactly what would happen when it's very heavy rain, when the road is a bit slippery, because they've seen it. They've spun around sometimes. They've lost control. They know what to do. A new driver still has to go through that and see it before they'll be able to make a judgment on speed and so on, which you know. Yeah. So a new mother knows exactly what to go through as children, as they have more children. A new mother might not. An old mother will know. Having had 2 or 3 kids, they'll know exactly when a child starts doing certain things, they know what to do. But a new mother needs, even though they can do all the other things, they need to know certain things through experience. It's really just experience.
It's just experience.
The captain is not more intelligent than a co-pilot. He's just more experienced, or she's just more experienced than the co-pilot.
Okay.
So the responsibility lies on the captain. So the captain is in charge of everything that's going on. Sometimes it's little things. Sometimes in the cabin, you might get, the cabin crew might say, there's an oven not working or it's sparking or whatever. And the captain has to make a decision on whether they can do a reset or not, depending on whether the aircraft is, the situation. He or she has to make the assessment before they give the instruction to the cabin crew on what to do.
What's a reset?
A reset of the oven system maybe might need that, but it's a fire hazard as well. So the captain has to make a decision on whether to leave it like that or to just leave it disarmed and use all the other ovens or something. Sometimes the toilets stop working. They can't flush. And even though the airplane's working well and so on, they have to do a landing and then scheduled landing somewhere because the toilets are blocked. You can't go for the next 8 hours with no toilets. It's just so airplanes have landed at a strange airport because they need to sort out the toilets.
Wow.
So might be just the smallest of things. And the captain has to decide then, okay, so the toilets are not working. If I go for another hour, that airport is probably better than landing here. For us, that airport is better because we go there. It's a company port. It might be better to go there, the captain. Whereas a new pilot might say, oh, there's an airport, let's land there. And nobody knows the airline. And, so all these kind of decisions are things that maybe the commander knows what to do and take the best course of action.
Okay.
So that's the difference, really.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And in terms of your accolades, I know you got in the UK.
The UK, yeah. The UK, I got in the UK, I got an aviation award because of my dedication to aviation, and I got it from Aerotime. Aerotime, a big organization that do this sort of thing, podcasts. They do shows. They do certain consultancies all over Europe, and so it's a big organization. So they recognized me and said, look, we'd like to recognize you for your contributions to aviation and how you're inspiring young people and other aviators in the industry. So I got that. So 4 years ago, then I got through what we used to be called the Guild of Air Pilots and Navigators. I got the freedom of the City of London. And again, because the Guild of Air Pilots, as it was called, it's now called the Company of Air Pilots, is a livery company of the City of London. So I qualified for that again because of my contributions to aviation and so on. So I've got the freedom on the key to the City of London.
Wow, lucky you. So tell me, when you look at your life, when you look at your career, what were the most interesting part of flying and the worst flight that you had? What was one of your best flights, and where were you going, and what was the worst, and what happened?
Yeah. I don't know if I can actually pick one that's the most interesting, because your show is called Moments with Nyengeterai.
Yes.
There are so many moments in aviation where you're descending into some airport, for example. You're descending into some airport. Maybe it's in the early evening, the sun is setting, and just the view of the city, the lights coming on and the sun setting, and it's peaceful. It's calm. There's no turbulence at all. The airplane is just gliding through, and you look through, and we go quite often. We look at each other, me and the co-pilot and the other crew, and say, "Wow, isn't this beautiful?" And you can see that, and you just get a lot of those moments. Most recently, I was going into Alaska, Anchorage, and I saw the moon rising as we were descending into Anchorage, and the moon came. It was a full moon, and you could see the lights of Anchorage, but because it's up, you could see the sun setting, but you could also see the moon.
Oh, wow.
And it's like I say, there's no one single, there's just these moments that you see. When I was flying here in Air Zimbabwe, you'd fly past Mount Kilimanjaro, and you just look at it in the distance, and it was always different when you went past it. Going to Nairobi, for example, you'd go past Kilimanjaro, the routing we used to take, and now you see things like Mount Fuji, you see the Himalayas, and it's just moments, really. It's moments as opposed to any one single
thing. Oh, wow.
Yeah. The worst, I just, like passengers, we hate turbulence, we hate bad weather, and I hate having to negotiate all that. But then again, at the same time, it's exciting to negotiate and come out the other side and say, yeah, I battled the elements, we got through it, and we're back down on the ground safe. You walk away quite proud, actually, to say, yeah, we did a good job, guys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I've done landings where the airplane is shaking quite violently.
I was about to say, what were your scariest landings, if ever?
Yeah. I once landed in Hong Kong, the old airport, which was called Kai Tak Airport. And it wasn't the classic one where you land through, you come around and you had to do a visual maneuver to land onto the runway. It was actually the opposite runway, which was more of a straight in to land. And this particular one, you came through a gap of two hills. It's called the Lei Yumun Gap, and we came through that gap. As we came in through that gap, we hit really, really bad turbulence. It was so bad, we could hardly read the instruments. Wow. The airplane was shaking that bad. It was only like 45 seconds. But 45 seconds coming in close to the ground is, we had the stick shaker twice as the airplane, and we were almost about to go around, and then it just became smooth again. We carried on and landed. And there's landings where you land the airplane, and you've had a battle with the elements or strong winds and really bad turbulence on final approach. You land and you're pretty much sweating.
Really?
You're fighting with the airplane, because it's being pushed this way. You're fighting it to keep it online. It's a battle. It's a battle. It can be a battle.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Because it's I always say that, when you watch movies, they romanticize that, and it always looks like so easy and, particular. So I always wonder that when it's raining and it's pouring, how do these people land? I think what you've said is really put a lot of things into perspective, I think, for me. So when you look back at your career, what were your 5 key pivotal moments that you say, these are the 5 lessons that I learned from my career?
I think one of the main lessons is working with people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, and so on, and you're in a confined space in a cockpit. So you're having to now adjust your behavior and the way you interact with others so that you have a nice working environment. You're not alone. You can't do the aviation thing, flying airliners and so on your own. It doesn't work. Every time people have attempted to be on their own or be alone in the cockpit, there's been an accident.
Oh, okay. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's the first lesson. The next lesson is being able to understand that you're going to be separated quite often from family and adjusting to living and working away from family for long periods of time and then maintaining that connection. I've learned over the years how to maintain a connection between me and my wife and the children and so on. You need to, suddenly communication becomes very important. How to maintain that communication and being able to have the empathy to understand the other side. It's not just about you. You need the empathy of what's my partner going through now that I'm here, I'm in the hotel, I've checked in, we're having dinner with my friend and so on. We have to empathize what's happening on the other side. So having empathy and understanding what other people are going through, apart from just your own family, the situation of the people that you're working with. Empathy is quite important, I've found, in working environments that we do.
Okay. Any other lesson?
Okay. Another lesson is that you will never be able to be successful in any industry unless that is exactly what it is you wanted to do. Because I've worked with people in this industry who came into it because people said it's a good job. You get to fly and the money is quite good. And they haven't been very successful at it. And in many instances, they didn't enjoy it. And quite a lot of them left halfway through the industry, or they never made it through the constant checks I was telling you about. And so they didn't perform as required because actually they were just doing it because somebody suggested to them that it's a good job.
They're not passionate about it.
So you need that passion, of course. But you only get the passion once you're into the profession. You don't have the passion to fly necessarily. Everybody says you've got to have the passion. Actually, the passion comes after you're in the industry. Then you build that passion and say, I chose this industry because it's what I wanted to do. But now I can actually say I have the passion for it. That shows right. Otherwise, you can't have a passion for something you don't do yet. You have a desire for something you haven't done yet. You have this desire and the dream to do something. So you get into an industry because you have the dream and the desire and the requirement to do it. Once you're in it, you develop a passion for it. That's how it actually works. You actually don't go in with a passion. I know everybody says that, but actually I think you develop it once you're in the industry. So any industry, I think you develop the passion once you're in it, as opposed to having it before you go in. You have the desire before you go in. So it starts with a dream, then you have the desire, then you go into it, then you develop the passion. That's what I think.
That's true.
That's my take on it.
What has been your staying power? I mean, it's been years and you still speak and you're so passionate about it. Like, we just do it. The passion. The passion is just there. It's there. I mean, what has been your staying power?
I think my staying power is, I think it just goes back to day one. It's what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. I think if you choose right, you'll know. You know, these things. I keep seeing them a lot online. When you know, you know.
No.
If you know, you know.
No.
You know, what does this actually mean? What are people saying when they say, if you know, you know? I think they're just trying to say there's a knowing, of the right thing. Maybe call it the universe, call it God. For people who believe in God, like myself, of course, I think God's timing doesn't have an expiration date, if you like. And when you desire something, if you don't get it today, you don't get it in 2 years, you don't get it in 10 years, it's not because that's not what you're going to get. You think you're running out of time, but in fact, the universe and God knows what the right time will be. And God's timing has no expiration date. That's why people, for example, a good example is people might try a specific business or might try whatever. People might try to have, for women, for example, there's women who try to have a child for 5 years, 10 years, and so on. And then they think, oh, and I'm 35 years old, I'm 40. It will never happen. And then it happens because even if you're 40 or 45, you'll have a child because God's timing has no expiration date. It will happen. And when you know, God will let you know exactly that this is what you want to do and this is where you're going to go. Because everything I did in my profession, everything just fell into place. Even when there were obstacles, there were obstacles because, there's competition. There's always competition. People put obstacles in front of you because they think you're competing with them, even if you're not. They think you're competing, you're in this and so on. I just went with the flow. I just concentrated, instead of fighting for positions, I concentrated on the actual industry, which no one can take away from you. I concentrated on that, and everything else just came when it came, without me actually making any effort for it. That's why I'm saying it's my staying power was simply because I just stayed in what I went in to do right at the beginning. When you do something and you find things aren't working, normally you might say, you know what, let's go back to the beginning where this started. Let's just do that. And they,
you're growing big.
Let's go back to Jaira because this is not working and so on. And they, what we always did, let's go there. Then we might come back. But right now, everybody, let's go back to Zotaita. Put this back, we're doing Zotaita. That's what it is.
I love that. When you've been talking, just as to round off our conversation, when you've been talking, one of the key things that have come up, you've talked about family a lot. So I just want to understand how that has kept, how that has affected your career, the importance of family, and how you can advise other young pilots who are coming up. I mean, what advice would you give the other young pilots? And not just pilots, I think any family, from where you've come from what you've done, and from how family has been important for you.
Yeah, it's really quite important. I've been married now for 30. I better get this right.
Yeah, you better get it. You better get it. I didn't ask you what was the dose.
Because my Madam Theo put me in trouble. He said, what? It's not that. So if anything, I won't put a lower figure. I might put a higher figure rather than... Anyway, I've been married for 34 years, even though we've been together, I would say 39 years. So we're approaching 40 years together.
Wow.
Nearly, since I knew her. But the important thing here is you need somebody at home to support you and your profession. And somebody who understands that when they get into marrying a pilot, whether it's male or female, if I was married to a female pilot, same thing, I've got to understand that she'll be going away. In my case, she understood I'll be going away. That's the industry. There's a lot of things that the people you leave behind goes through while you're not there. In this profession, you're going to miss birthdays. You're going to miss anniversaries. You're going to be away when people pass on. You're going to have to make emergencies to go back, to go and meet family issues. People will be sick when you're away. You have to come back quickly because you'll be the other side of the world. And that's happened throughout the profession. And let me tell you what, the temptations are great. You're in your uniform. You're at the hotel. You're checking in. There's females. You're working with a lot of pretty women. You're working with a lot of handsome guys. So either male or female. It's tempting. The temptations are all there all the time. So you just have to have the presence of mind to know that this can ruin everything that you're intending to build up or everything that you've built up. And remember, everybody's looking for what. The only reason the people that you might meet up might take an interest in you is because they see something that is good and stable.
Yeah.
So they think, that's something I would like. This person represents what I'm looking for.
Exactly.
So I want that. So if I go with him, or if I go with her, depending whether you're male or female, I might get that because that person is representing exactly what I want. So let me get closer. So the temptations are great. You need a resilience, but you need a loving family at home to keep you on the right track. If you are not happy at home and you're in strife and you're stressed, it's not the place to be in an aeroplane in that condition. There's an accident, which I won't mention the airline, but there's an accident some 40 years ago that happened because the captain had a problem. He was a very strong union member. So he had a problem with what the company was doing to the employee services and the conditions of service. So he was extremely angry. He'd had a meeting that morning and he had spoken to somebody and he was very angry when he went in the aeroplane. And even before he even boarded the aeroplane, he was in a temper. He got in the aeroplane, they flew, something happened just after takeoff. And I think quite a lot of the anger and destruction that he had, the junior pilot and the third pilot were absolutely terrified to say too much and so on because the captain was very angry and the atmosphere in the cockpit just wasn't right. And they all made a mistake and the airplane crashed just after takeoff. See, when there's an incident in aviation, they look at everything. They look at the background, what was happening. For example, if there's an accident happens today, they look at the background. All these accidents that you've seen recently, they're going to look at everything that happened. They look all the way back to the moment that pilot woke up that morning. What did he do? What did she do? What did they eat? Did they go to the gym? When they went to the gym, who did they speak to? What exercise did they do? They look, the aircraft investigation, they look at all that. What did they eat? If it happens at an outport, at an outstation, they go to the hotel and say, what room were these people in? What did they eat at dinner? If they're in this room, they go into the waste paper bin, pick up everything in there to see if there's any medication, if there's any chocolate wrappers or anything. They take all that to see how, if anything, could have affected the state of mind of the pilot.
Oh, wow.
They look at every single thing. What did they do? Where did they go? So they have the entire history usually for the week leading up to the accident.
Wow. Gosh, yeah.
So you need support at home. You need, in Hong Kong, who have been working for more than 30 years, there's a saying, if you want to retire happy, then leave with the same husband or wife that you came with.
That's a very good one.
Right? If you want to leave happy and also leave wealthy, then the husband or the wife that you came with to Hong Kong, live with the same. Then you'll be happy, you'll be wealthy, and you'll have a happy retirement.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that one. I think that's the one I'm going to put on your straight talk. So that just to close off, I just want to ask, if you were to give advice to someone who wants to become a pilot, what is the one thing that you would say to them before they start practicing to be a pilot?
Stay true to the profession and the industry you went into. So stay true to being a pilot if that's what you've gone into. Not all the other peripheral stuff. Stay true to just flying airplanes and aviation and how to make it safe. Don't do any other stuff on the sides and think, oh, I can also do this, I can also do this. Initially, just concentrate on what you want to do. Essentially, what you want to do is fly airplanes and fly airplanes from A to B and how to do the best that you can. And remember this one thing, the best flying machine or best flying aeroplane, whenever you're flying, is whatever aeroplane you happen to be flying at that time. Because if you're sitting in this aeroplane and looking at another aeroplane outside the window and saying, I wish I could be flying that, you're not flying the aeroplane you're sitting in properly. So the best aeroplane flying in the sky is whatever aeroplane you have to be flying at that time.
Wow.
Then you'll fly it properly.
Oh,
when you change aeroplanes and go to another one, then that becomes the best flying aeroplane in the world.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it makes a lot of sense, actually. Yes. Okay, I know we're supposed to be rounding off, but the black box, how come it always survive? How do they make, how does it survive?
Okay, so the black box, there's two boxes. One is a cockpit voice recorder that records every single thing. That's every noise, basically. Everything we say in the cockpit on the microphones, each pilot, everything is recorded.
And it goes
There's area microphones in the cockpit that pick up all that. And the other ones pick up, of course, the ones that are just through the microphone, through the radio system. Anything, a cough, even a pen dropping. They might not know it's a pen, but they know that something dropped in the cockpit at this time. Yeah. And so that's the cockpit voice recorder. So that's a continuous tape that keeps recording everything that's going on. But it generally it records the last 30 minutes up to landing or the last 30 minutes up to an aeroplane crash, 30 minutes before that, everything that happened 30 minutes before, all the conversation in the cockpit will be recorded. That's the cockpit voice recorder. The black box flight data recorder, which isn't black for a start. Okay. I think the term black box might have come from it's a black incident, as in it's a black day, it's a dark day, the airplane's crashed, an incident has happened. Anyway, but it's not black, it's a bright fluorescent yellow or orange so that it can be visibly identified in a wreckage.
Okay.
So it's a very fluorescent type, bright yellow or orange color. So it's not black. Okay. It's placed in an area normally that is likely to survive being damaged. So it's normally in the tail section in the cone. So quite often aeroplanes crash with the nose first or the belly first. So normally the tail section survives. So it's normally placed at the back of the tail section, even though it's recording stuff. So it records everything going on at the engines, everything going on in the cockpit, all the instrumentations, everything going on. It records all that up to the time of shutting down the engines when you park the airplane. Then it's going to start a new flight and record that because, and if anything happens, severe turbulence, for example, or a hard landing and so on, we as pilots can say, can you please take the black box recordings, and they'll download the information so they can see if the airplane needs specific inspection because of what's happened. But anyway, this black box voice data recorder records everything, and then it's also got its own battery, but the battery only lasts usually 50 hours or 48 hours. It will transmit an emergency signal so that it can be found.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very fascinating.
So to keep transmitting, so specific airplanes with specific equipment can find out and trace where the signal is coming from and say it's coming from this area. They can direct rescue people and say, go there.
And we
think that's where the airplane has gone down. So they can go there and they'll find it. And that's what will tell them exactly what happened right up to the point of impact.
That's very interesting. So now I love sitting in business class, but I think obviously at this rate, I think the tail station is the most, I'm safer at the back. Anyway, just to close off our conversation, I'm going to have some fun, relaxing questions. So tell me, what's your favorite color and why?
My favorite color is green.
Why green?
I don't know. It's not so much green, it's the avocado green. It's just a color that, I don't know, it just resonates with me. Maybe it's also the green of nature, and it's a nice color. So I like that. Favorite number is 3 because that's my birthday.
Oh, okay.
bird.
Your favorite animal and why?
Do I have a favorite animal? If I was to choose a favorite animal, what would I choose? Wow, that's a difficult one because I've never really thought of having a favorite animal per se.
Really?
But I think you'll be surprised, but I've watched lots of, like everybody has, watched a lot of animal movies and so on. There's something about the wolf.
Really?
A wolf, yeah. Yeah. There's something about a wolf.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a beautiful animal. And if you watch wolves in the wild, especially a wolf with its cubs and so on, they're just fascinating animals. So maybe a wolf, possibly a polar bear, but a wolf, I would say.
Okay,
Yeah.
very interesting. And your favorite all-time music, if we were to play music right now and you'd get on your feet, what is those 1 or 2 songs that you say, you know what, these they hit the right note?
There's some songs which take you back and have these special memories. James Brown is one of those. There's a song we used to play when we were at high school, or all of us, my friends, we used to dance to it, and it's called The Payback by James Brown.
Okay.
It's one of those songs. It's because whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to my school days when I used to go to the airport to watch airplane, but we used to play this song called The Payback.
By James Brown.
Yeah, it's I would play that for sure. If I was stuck on a desert liner, one of their songs I would take is probably James Brown.
James Brown. Oh, wow. And movie? What's the one-time favorite movie that you've watched and you just say, you know, that movie, it like really made an impact?
An impact? I don't know.
Or was so much fun that, you know, what's the one movie that stands out?
I think I enjoyed all the Apollo series.
Ah.
Yeah. I mean, Apollo 13 is one. But if I was to choose one, maybe The Right Stuff. It's called The Right Stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, I know The Right Stuff. Oh.
Yeah, The Right Stuff.
Okay. If today was like the last day you're about to transcend and, and you'd say, God, now I'm ready to die because I've done what? Yeah. Or I've achieved what? What is the one thing that you've said, you know what? Once I do this, at least I'll feel like I've, what is it?
I think I've achieved it now because I've got there. I've done the profession I wanted. I've brought up a lovely family. My children have got to where they should be education-wise, and I've maintained a healthy and loving relationship with my wife. I think if God took me today, I'd say, you know what, God, yeah, I've got gratitude for everything that you've given me. I think I can say thank you. My wife is here with the children, but I think everything I think gratitude is so important, and I've got total gratitude for where I am today through God's grace.
I don't even know if I can even ask this question because really, so normally our last question is, we've packed our bags. We are going to the airport. Where are we flying off to? How do you ask a pilot that, okay, we've packed our bags. Yes. We're going to the airport. Where are we flying to? What's the one destination you'd love to fly to and just go and relax and have fun?
Oh, I know exactly where we'll go. We'll go somewhere to Thailand. That's where I go because we have fun there. It's a place, it's a place to relax. Anytime we have a few days, I've got a few days off and so on, my wife and I, we go to Thailand.
Wow.
It's just a spot we like going to. It's
relaxing.
I'm very sure that's probably where I'd take the airplane and go and fly and land there, and then would have time there and then fly back.
Fly back.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Thailand.
Yeah. Thailand it is. Yeah. This has just been amazing. I don't know. I wish I could I still have so many questions that I want to ask you, but I know that our time is up and we're probably going to do a part 2 because we're going to ask people who probably send in questions. We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, we can do part 2.
Just to close us off, what are your parting words to our viewers?
I would say, choose the right profession. Choose wisely, not just profession, but choose wisely as far as your husband goes, as far as your wife goes. Choose wisely. Don't choose because that's the trend and that's what's in. Okay? find out what it is that makes you tick, and find out what it is that makes the other person tick. Do you actually gel together? And are you able to maintain that butterflies in the stomach? It never actually happens like that. It only happens at the beginning. 20 years down the track. No. You want to be able to say, you know what? I think I chose right, even though this person or this profession can be quite tiring sometimes. It can be quite irritating, or this person that I chose can be quite irritating and so on. But God, do I love them. That's what you want to be. You want that. You want that peace.
You want that peace. You want that peace. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I'm going to do a follow-up. I know we're closing, but a follow-up on that one. You've been married for 35? 34 years. And what advice would you say to the young people? Because I'm finding that a lot of young people are, let's get married. And, we say till death do us part. But it's like, till I'm bored,
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you could say as advice to, in terms of keeping the marriage going, for 35, we've been married for 25 years. This year's 26 years. And I just want to know, obviously we all learn from people before us. So what is the one or few things, advice that you would give?
First of all, the trend currently is that getting married is you're getting into a prison and you're getting into jail. You're going to lose your freedom. And the usual saying is, have your fun first and then get married, and implying that when you get married, you're not having fun. Yeah. And also the implication is that if you're married, you're not having fun, because when you're single, you can go out with different people, you can have different relationships, and it's a lot more fun. But in fact, a large study was done in USA, Europe, and Canada, and they found that if you stay married, let's say you stay married for 40 years, as opposed to being single for 40 years. If you stay married for 40 years, if it's purely a sexual thing, which is the current sexual revolution, everybody's saying I can do what I want, can sleep with who I want, and so on. If you stayed married throughout your life for 40 years, for example, the actual act of having sex, you actually have more sex if you stay married.
I like that.
Yeah, in terms of the actual act of intercourse and so on. People who stay married actually have more sex than single people. It doesn't look like it, because single people are having this one, then they're having this one. But the actual act, you have more if you stay married.
Oh, wow. Powerful.
But marriage works, but you've got to work at it. A profession works, but you've got to be dedicated to it and maintain the reasons you went into it in the first place. If you maintain those and stay dedicated to the industry, you'll make it. If you maintain your marriage and your love for it, then again, it will work. It actually gets better and better, even though it's getting a really bad rap right now. Oh, most people divorce and so on. It doesn't work. Waste of time and so on. No, it isn't actually. I think it gets better. I think one of the things you want in later life is peace. And I think, having been married for so long now, I think I'm getting more and more peaceful as we age together. It's the peace that you want. For me as a man, I can tell you the one thing that most men want is it's easy. They just want a full stomach and peace.
Full stomach and peace.
Really, that's I don't know what the female side is, but certainly for men, you just want peace. And
a full stomach.
I get a bad rap from my Madam P, because she said to me, why don't you go out a lot more? Why don't you have a lot of friends and so on? It's because I just want to be peaceful. It's just so much peaceful. And then sometimes when she has issues with some, she says, I need to be like you. Too many friends. Yeah, because we just want peace.
We just want peace.
If my family is happy, the other day I was swimming at home, I was happy. My family are doing well. My wife was sitting there. I'm happy. It's good. So choose wisely. Profession, choose wisely. Partner. It's good. It works.
It works.
Yes.
It works. It works. So as we're closing today, I'd like to say to our viewers, choose wisely. Choose your partner wisely and choose your profession wisely. Have a fantastic week and we will see you next week. Goodbye.